What's up, Degenerate Nation? Welcome to the Big Bets on Campus podcast. This is the Mountain West Conference betting preview. I'm Stuckey, and joining me today are my fellow BBOC co-hosts, Mike Calabrese and the one and only Josh Nunn, a.k.a. Duck. This is part 3 of our preseason conference betting previews. If you haven't already, make sure you check out the interview series that Duck and Breeze did, and then the Pac-12, which is already out, and the Sun Belt. We're recording MAC tomorrow, and it'll just keep rolling from there. The best preseason content in the podcast game. Gentlemen, I'm excited to get into this beautiful Mountain West, this redesigned Mountain West, which is going to look a lot different. Boise State, San Diego State, Fresno State, Utah State, and Colorado State all out. Northern Illinois, naturally, in the Mountain West Conference, joins from the MAC. North Dakota State moves up from FCS to FBS. Really curious to get Duck's thoughts on that. And UTEP, Minor Nation, joins Mountain West Conference. So, obviously, the conference as a whole got worse. As you can tell, I mean, some of the best teams are out. You know, who's the happiest is UNLV. They can't lose to Boise State in the Mountain West Conference Championship game again. It is worth noting that North Dakota State is eligible for the Mountain West Conference Championship for a bowl game. A couple months ago, they were not, but the NCAA changed the ruling, and there is no probationary period anymore. So North Dakota State is almost, I mean, at some books, they're really close to the favorite, which is pretty crazy in their first year in FBS. When I first look at this conference, obviously, you know, besides the downgrade overall, right, like replacing Boise, San Diego State, Fresno, Utah State, and Colorado State with NIU, UTEP, and then a first-time FBS member, a lot of quarterback uncertainty, which is probably going to go a long way in determining how this conference plays out, the outcome of win totals. I mean, of the 10 teams, 7 could have transfer quarterbacks starting. 7 could have new quarterbacks. I mean, the only teams where I'm like, I know that this is the starter for sure are Sarka at Air Force, Colson at UTEP, Alejado at Hawaii, and I assume Hughes at Wyoming. So I guess 4. The other, and then I guess Hayes too for North Dakota State. The other 6, there's potential quarterback battles. Even with New Mexico, and we'll talk about that, even though Jack Lane is back, he might not necessarily have that job. He was hurt in the spring. They bring in an Oregon transfer. But this conference is, I love this conference. I can't wait to bet the late night games. Before we dive into each of all 10 teams, this conference in particular, part of what makes it fun, and as a bettor, what you really want to pay attention to is a majority of these home venues, right? You have altitude, you have wind, you have potential snow. So like Laradice, and with Wyoming, you can have snow. You could have huge winds, one of the windiest places in the country. You can get winds in Hawaii, great atmospheres, right? I mean, New Mexico now has a home field advantage after last year with all of the excitement around EC. They're actually getting crowds, right? UNLV, the altitude and Air Force, the venue and wind in Hawaii, North Dakota State, Fargo Dome, you mentioned, Nevada, you can get some crazy weather there. And then the bottom 3, not so much, but some home field advantages and home conditions that you're going to want to pay attention to, especially as we get into conference play. But let's dive into each of these teams. Let's start with New Mexico. The Lobos are, depending on the book, they're book I'm looking at now, plus 350 to win the conference. They were jobbed last year. I wish they would have gotten to the Mountain West Conference Championship. Mountain West ended in a 4-way tie last year, and there were tiebreakers. New Mexico couldn't go. It was UNLV Boise once again, but that can't happen this year because Boise is out. New Mexico's win total over 8.5, juiced slightly to the under. They finished 9-3 in the regular season last year. They go from 135th in returning production to 21st. So this is a team, a rare G16 that returns a lot of production, and it speaks volumes to the job that Eck did last year with that team that was bottom 5 in returning production, getting them the 9 wins. I will say, this is a team that easily could have only finished with six-ish wins. A lot of those coin flips went their way. So maybe there's some potential regression, although they weren't lucky in the turnover department. They finished -6, and they lost 13 of their 17 fumbles. One thing, however, that could flip the close games from wins to losses could be their special teams. Very good special teams last year, top 20 per my numbers, and they lose everybody in that department. So they could see a significant drop. They unfortunately don't get to face NIU, but they get UNLV, North Dakota State, and Air Force at home. That is a pretty big advantage for New Mexico, as I mentioned. They now have a home field advantage. They should start 3-1 before, let's see. Actually, they probably should start 4-1 before a bye and then a trip to Hawaii. So that bye is very helpful from a scheduling perspective. Tricky spot in the schedule at Wyoming, maybe late in the season, sandwiched in between UNLV and Air Force. I already mentioned this, but Jack Lane's back. He missed the spring. They also had a couple wide receivers that they're relying on that were hurt in the spring as well. That's worth keeping an eye on. But they brought in a quarterback from Oregon, and Luke Moga, who can fly. He has a lot of speed. He might end up winning this job. Regardless, New Mexico is in very good shape when it comes to quarterback depth, right? So there's some of these teams, I'll talk about it throughout, that just they need the quarterback to stay healthy. New Mexico is not one of those teams. So sometimes when you bet an under, Duck, you talk, I love unders, you love unders. One of the things that you can benefit from betting an under is injuries, right? You can't get healthier than you are, but you could lose a quarterback, right? You could lose a couple of your star players. Yeah, but New Mexico at least is in good shape from a quarterback perspective, and they do rank in the top 25 in returning production. Mike, I can see you like the under here. I can see your case. Was thinking about it going in to my Mountain West work. I ended up projecting them at like 8.3. So I don't think I'm going to get there on the under. And the main reason, I just have too much respect for Eck. But I can see the case. Do you want to make it?
So I'm going to put this out there right now. It's not logged in the app, and I'm going to wait as long as I can in fall camp because this one is quarterback dependent. But let's zoom out first and look at the whole preview. You talked about that close game potential regression. That's on the table. Also, I just think some of the preseason projections are off. Multiple outlets have favored them in 10 or even 11 games, with the exception of the trip to Norman, Oklahoma. This isn't the Liberty schedule from 3 years ago, in my opinion. They're 92nd in strength of schedule per ESPN, so I think it's a little rich to put them at double digit, being a favorite. Some nice pieces certainly return at all 3 levels on the defense. Special teams, though, I had to put on my Stuckey hat here. As soon as I was looking through it, to lose not 1 but 2 second-team All-Mountain West performers, a place kicker who was hyper-accurate, a punter who constantly flipped the field for them, I think that's going to put more pressure on their offense. That was really mediocre down the stretch. When you look at it, 19 points per game in their final 4 games in regulation. Jack Lane, I've seen enough. He's a below-average starter, game manager at best. Lobstein is still that nice change-of-pace runner when he comes in, but he's not an answer full-time, at least in my opinion.
I mean, he'll be like the 3rd and 1, 4th and 1.
Sure, and he certainly can pop big plays. He gives them a little bit more explosiveness from an offense that desperately needs it.
Yeah, but his short yardage is invaluable. I mean, in their wins last year, they went 15 of 20 on 4th down. Opponents went 9 of 21. We talked about some of the close games, like those 4th downs can swing it. So he does have a valuable role, but yeah, he can't be in every down. So he can't be an every play starter.
And here's the quarterback dependent angle. If they name Luke Maga the starter from the get-go, not only am I pulling this off the table, I think I'm going to consider them to win the Mountain West Conference because I think that's how good this kid is. I'm shocked that they had him. Like for Oregon to go recruit him, and when you watch the tape of his spring game at Oregon and his work in high school, he gives off a little that Bo Nix, energy. He's got accuracy. He's a quick twitch athlete. He can move outside the pocket to pick up yards or also just extend plays. So really, this is the next 2 or 3 weeks. This is critical because this flips everything. He's the kind of athlete and kind of high level quarterback that New Mexico never gets. And this is an offense that needs off script playmaking. So it's that simple to me. If Jack Lane is QB1 to start the season, the fact that they're favored in so many games this season doesn't make sense to me. Not to say that they can't get buyer's remorse and pull a quarterback switch, in week 1, week 2, week 3, but dealing with the full deck of information, that's why I'm going to go under with Lane. And then if it ends up being Maga, let's go over on him.
Yeah, I can see the case for the under. I also can see the case for the over. You have, I love Eck. I don't know if he's going to be, how long he's going to be at New Mexico. And you have another Eck at linebacker, comes back to preseason defensive player of the year. There are questions at pass rush. They lost James Newby. Their other defensive end was pretty good as well. I think they had like 34 sacks last year. And they lost 2 of the most productive in that department, but they returned 9 of their top 15 on offense and defense in snap count. A lot of production, quarterback depth, got a home field advantage back. And look, Calabrese, you mentioned the schedule, and I have them projected to be favored in 11 games. I'm looking at
the think about how crazy that is from August.
But where would you have them a dog? Like, they're going to lose at Oklahoma, but where would you have them as a dog? I have them, and the lowest underdog I have is home against UNLV, which is under a field goal. Air Force at home, a little over a field goal. But they get all their toughest games at home. Their road schedule, throwing out the Oklahoma game, is New Mexico State, Hawaii after a bye, San Jose State, Nevada, and Wyoming. I mean, this is kind of a dream schedule. What are you saying?
I think the dream schedule is true. I think there's a chance that we close in, and maybe they'll still be favored, but instead of it being by 7 to North Dakota State, it's 2.5. Or later in the year against UNLV, that's a pick. Or home against Air Force in the season finale, if Zarka shows up healthy and the offense is rolling and they put some things together on defense, that's closer to a 2 or 3 point spread. It's just right now, I think this is accounting for everything that they showed last year, the coaching upgrade, and assuming that they're going to have the same kind of defense that, really helped them in close games last year. It's just not the way the college football works at the G6 level. It's not a copy and paste from last year. There's lots of personnel changes. In my opinion, I just think it's a little bit nuts, even though the schedule basically forces our hands. If you told me I had to handicap all of these games, I'd still probably land on 10 games as them as a favorite. I just think it's essentially accounting for things to stay the same. And as you mentioned in your monologue at the top, half the teams in this league are trying out new quarterbacks or will mix and match and try to land on something. Somebody has to pop. There has to be a 3rd or 4th best team in this conference that kind of emerges out of nowhere. And I think that's what could kind of change a little bit of the arithmetic, at least against the spread.
Yeah. Well, Mike's potentially looking to sell. I'm neutral. Duck, where do you stand?
I do want to take a minute and just think about the coaching job by Jason Eck. If you look at the mass exodus of talent that left when Bronco Mendenhall bailed for Utah State, the cupboards were bare. The team was devoid of talent. The defense was atrocious in 2024, and he tripled the havoc numbers. They went from, I think, recording 11 sacks to 34. The tackles for loss, they were tougher up front. They do lose some of that defensive line talent, so I worry about New Mexico maybe not being as strong against the run as they were last season. And they actually do lose some guys in the skill position rooms. They had a loaded backfield last year. The top 3 are gone. Scottry Humphrey is a very talented running back. He came over at the start of last year from Montana State and never really broke through. He'll take on contact, and he'll be a physical runner, and he'll be really solid. But I actually don't love the fact that these guys are unsettled at the quarterback position. You want to go into a season off of having an exquisite 9-4 season that they had last year, kind of knowing who's going to be leading the offensive platoon. And the fact that they had so much confidence in Jack Lane last year, and they stuck with him through the elbow injury, which he's still recovering from. They bring in Luke Moga, who is very athletic and will vie for the job here. And even the third string guy, James Lobstein, is in the mix. I just don't love the fact that you're unsettled. The offensive line should be okay. You're really getting a blend here with two starters back from last year, two guys who ran with the second platoon, and then you're getting a starter in from Weber State. I think the offensive line will be okay. They have a very, very solid linebacker core. Jackson Eck was all over the field last year, 129 tackles, and was just always in on stops. And as long as he stays healthy, I think the linebacker core will be solid. Drew Speech could really morph into a real nice, versatile nickel player. And the secondary, we'll see. I thought that when you look at New Mexico and what they were in 2024, they made so many strides in preventing explosive plays, something they could not do under the previous regime. When you look at they were top 30 per my metrics, measuring 20, 30, and 40-yard plays surrendered against them. And I think they could be strong at that once again. Stuck, you mentioned at the top, special teams was such a factor for them. They're breaking in a new kicker who comes in from Wagner. Now, he was accurate, 13 out of 14, but he only had a long of 44, and he only had 2 touchbacks on kickoffs. And so that'll stress New Mexico's return coverage units after scores. You're losing a return specialist who returned multiple kickoffs for touchdowns last season, and so you're going to need a return specialist to emerge. There are just a couple of things that are going to have to be tinkered with to get this team to perform at a level like they did last season. And now you go from 2 years ago having a win total of 1.5 to last year was about 4.5. And now you're at 8.5. It just seems like the expectations have gotten a little bit out of whack here. I don't want to bet against Jason Eck. There's some tough spots on this schedule, and we're talking about New Mexico here. I know Jason Eck is an exquisite coach, and I know that they bring back some decent talent, but they're unsettled at quarterback. They've got some landmines. Special teams is down. Defensive line will be a notch down. I'm out on the 8.5. I did pass on the under, but to assume 9-3 with New Mexico is very tough to do.
Yeah, I agree. But I will say, like you mentioned, the defense, I think they have a really good defensive coordinator, Nowinski. I think Eck's a very good coach, and like that was part of the reason they were able to do what they did last year. I'm not going to doubt them. Let's move on to UNLV, the favorites, the preseason favorites in the conference, around 3-1 to win the Mountain West. Win total right around where New Mexico's win total is. 8.5, juice to the under. This is a rebuild again, just like last year. They were bottom 10 in returning production. They're bottom 20 this year under Dan Mullen, who did a pretty good job getting them to 10 wins. Went 10-2 last year, but they lost a ton. I personally don't love their portal haul. I mean, guys like Stellato, Reddix, Walker, Burnett, like all these guys, none of them wow me. Like, and then Jackson Arnold. I'm not a Jackson Arnold guy. He still hasn't won the job over Alex Orji. That can't be a good sign. So, and then like their defense, like I think Santee, a little small, but he could be a good player from Holy Cross. But no one else really wows me on the defensive end that they brought in. And they lost a lot. And if you really dig into it, UNLV last year, they went 10-2 in the regular season. Easily, just like New Mexico. Easily could have only won 6 or 7 games. I mean, let's walk through their season. They beat Idaho State by 7. They beat the disaster of Sam Houston. They almost lost to Idaho State. They beat that UCLA with Foster again. They got the free UCLA win. They beat Miami of Ohio by 3. They were about to get blown out of the water, and Finn got hurt. There was a fumble late. It was an extremely lucky win. One of the worst losses I had all year. I think I got a push, fortunately, on some of the money I had. Wyoming by 14, but they blocked 2 punts for a touchdown in that game. Air Force in a coin flip. Utah State by 3 in double overtime because Utah State kept missing game-winning field goals and extra points. And then they blew out Hawaii, Nevada, and Colorado State. So really, they only had like 4 sure wins. They went 5-1 in one possession games. They were +7 turnover margin. So like, there's some potential looming regression here. I want to sell them. I still might. The problem is the schedule. Like, I think that the first half of the schedule breaks their way. I project, let me see where I'm at, 7-8-5. So like I'm I'm not quite there on what is their implied win total, like 8.2. Like I'm right on the edge. I think I'm going to stay away because of the schedule, but I will look elsewhere for my future, which we'll get to. But there's a lot of questions. I have questions about the trenches, and then obviously with Jackson Arnold, I'm just not a buyer. Duck, what are you seeing with the reps?
I know it didn't work out for Jackson Arnold in the SEC, and he's not in the SEC anymore. I think that there are some things with his skill set that can work here, very similar to what we saw with Calandria last year. Jet Thomas is going to do his thing and put up huge numbers again in the system.
Yeah, one of only two backs last year with 1,000+ yards and averaging 7 yards per carry.
I mean, it was very explosive. The system really did work, and I think they have a few pieces here. Few less receivers than what I would want to see here, so they're going to have some pass catchers emerge in fall camp. I actually don't hate the offensive line. You're getting two guys back from last year. Colton Thomason transfers in after playing 2 years at Baylor. Jackson Brown, he ran with the twos last year at Pitt, is coming over. The O-line has good size. If they do gel well together, I think these guys will be able to run the football regularly this season. And you know what? Give Dan Mullen some credit. He fixed the red zone woes. UNLV was horrific in the red zone the last several years before he got there, and they were stunningly better in the red zone, scored touchdowns on 70% of their trips, and the year before that it was like 39%. So it was really, really an increase with red zone productivity, which they needed. The defense is still a work in progress. I think Landon Thomas could be a guy who creates a little havoc. I do like Cam Santee coming over from Holy Cross. He made 112 tackles last year and 14 TFLs. Lucas Conti is a guy who's been in the system for a while, along with Andre Porter. So there are some pieces here. They've got 3 guys coming in the secondary from UTSA, TCU, and Oklahoma State that really need to come together very quickly because this defense was horrific at allowing explosive plays. They were bottom 5 in all of FBS, and they could not
The
stop.
coordinator's terrible.
I mean, it was just 22 times they gave up a 40-yard play on defense last year. It was like the worst in the entire country. I kind of felt like it got a little better at the end of the season. They allowed just 10 points to both Colorado State and Hawaii, 17 against Nevada. They were in that lower scoring game with Utah State before it went to double OT. So, I kind of want to see it with the defense before I really buy stock in UNLV, but there's a chance. I think the schedule, like you mentioned, Stuck, is very favorable. I will tell you, UNT immediately after Hawaii is a horrific spot. UNT is way down. We're on the regular season win total under there, but that's a tough spot. I think going to Akron and projecting to potentially lay 16 on the road with Akron is a brutal ATS fade spot. I think Wyoming coming in before the showdown with New Mexico is tough. But, I mean, they get a national game against Cal to really make some noise. They have an opportunity against North Dakota State at home, which is a spot where I want to play UNLV. There are some tricky schedule spots, but there are some opportunities for this team to really make some noise and solidify their positioning as conference co-favorite. So I don't hate the team. I don't love the win total either way, but I wouldn't be stunned if these guys, like we walked through it, I wouldn't be stunned if these guys are 6-0 or 7-0 before Air Force. And I think it could be a team that posts a strong record once again.
I'm also looking at that. I know they're coming off of a bye, but I'm looking at that Akron spot. Last year, UNLV off of a bye before the conference play started. It's the same thing. They went to Miami of Ohio, and they didn't get off the bus. They just got handed the game when there was a pick 6 and a quarterback injury. They were about to lose, I think, 40-0.
They were down 3 touchdowns in the second half.
Yeah, they were completely lifeless, and then there was injuries and fumbles. So I could see them just not getting off the bus against Akron. Calabrese, what are you seeing with the reps?
Well, first,
I will say, hold on, but one thing. It looks like Fuller will be eligible, their defensive tackle, which does help their defensive line. But I mean, I still have questions about their pass rush, their wide receivers. I'm not. They also, you mentioned their offensive lineman. One of their best offensive linemen is moving positions. So, but wide receiver and quarterback, I know Thomas is going to do his thing, but Calabrese, where do you land on the Rebels?
So I wanted to go under, but the schedule doesn't really allow me to do that. So at least I can take this opportunity to dump all over Jackson Arnold for a second. I know that Mullen's system can ameliorate this quarterback room a little bit, but I'm still deeply uncomfortable with it. Arnold's been lost at sea since the 2023 Alamo Bowl. That's the last time he threw for 300 yards in a game. He started 17 games since then. He processes too slow. He hangs on the ball way too long. Despite being a really good athlete, he rarely evades sacks. In his last 17 sacks, plus some spot duty, 64 sacks taken. QBR at OU was sub 50. At Auburn, 57.4. It's crazy, by the way. Like, he has turnover avoidance because he takes so many sacks, but he still has way more turnover worthy plays than big time throws. I don't see him avoiding sacks with this offensive line that gave up a ton of havoc the other way. Opponents had 79 TFLs against this UNLV offensive line, which is 114th in the country. And, the middle of the line is new. You're moving your talented left tackle, Austin Boyd, to center. So he's going to be playing a new position. I just think there's a handful of teams that can eat up this defense too on the other side of things. Cal, Air Force, if they're healthy at quarterback. I actually am higher on Memphis. I think the Decker system with the Tigers is going to work with either, Marcus Stokes or with Aaron Nolan. Some sneaky spots we talked about, at Akron. We're going to get into the Reese Poffenbarger saga. I think he could be really fun this year at New Mexico. I just think if this quarterback situation is a mess, and I know that Jet Thomas is a super fun player. He's never had 200 touches in a season, and he's still going to be incredibly explosive, but he's 5'9". He's probably really closer to like 185 pounds. Like, if they were to feed him a lot, I think he breaks down. Otherwise, I think they use him as a
And if he gets hurt, yikes.
Yeah, this offense could kind of fall off a cliff. You mentioned it, Duck, like, because the schedule the way it is, if they were 6-0, I think we'd all begrudgingly have to give them their flowers a little bit. And it's not the craziest thing when you look at the schedule. But if Thomas got hurt and neither of these quarterbacks are the answer, and I don't like Orgy just as much as I don't like Arnold, 7-5, I think, is also on the table. So it's a pass for me because my projections end up kind of aligning right on this number. But I think there's going to be a lot of spots to fade UNLV this fall.
All right, let's move on to Air Force, a team that I believe that we are all high on. This is probably my favorite future of any in non-win total of the group of 6 leagues. I love Air Force. Their win total, they're sitting at 7.5. They've taken some money. Was sitting at 6.5 juice the over. It's now 7.5, right around even money. They're about 6-1 to win the league. You have to look at Air Force. You don't look at them like other teams. Like, they are 37th in returning production. They don't bring anyone in the portal. They did lose a tight end to Montana State, which is weird. But they don't have money. They don't bring transfers in. It's a unique program, but they have a lot of returning production. And for the first time in 4 years, they have their quarterback back in Liam Sarka. I love him. It was a different team with him last year. This team, I think, is poised to take an enormous step forward this year under Calhoun. Look, I mean, the last 2 times they've had back-to-back losing years. They've won 10-plus games. I think there's a shot they can do it this year. The defense was what let them down. Well, first, the 2 things let them down last year. 1, Sarka got hurt. Their offense fell off a cliff. And 2, the defense was so bad. And in particular, their defense was so bad in the secondary. But I don't know how much better they can get because they're just a little slow-footed. But we just talked about all like the quarterback questions in this league. Like, who's really going to come out there and throw all over you? But they got a ton of experience, and they got better as the season went on. And they were playing like true freshmen. They're going to play a ton of sophomores and juniors that were all playing as freshmen and sophomores last year. They made a change at the nickel halfway through the year that they got Beckwith out of there. He's horrible. By the way, Gunther is horrible. I didn't even mention his name, defensive coordinator for UNLV. My biggest question, so I like the offensive line. I think the defense is going to improve. I mean, even at linebacker, they had 8 guys start at linebacker last year. There was a lot of injuries. 7 of them are back. The 2 positions that I worry about, like, I don't really care about the skill positions needing replenishing. It's Air Force. I do worry about center. It's going to be a new center, very important position for Air Force, and then defensive tackle. They lost a lot on the defensive line, and Zdroik was a stud. He was there for 4 years. Anytime he went out, like if he got hurt a couple games, it just was an absolute disaster. And they lost they lost 3 other multi-year starters on the defensive line. So I'm a little worried about the interior defensive and offensive line. But if there's one school where like, hey, find some big dudes that just know that you can plug in, I'm going to trust Air Force. But that is my biggest concern. I lean over. I project them at 8.3, but I just hate betting overs on service academies because like Air Force, Army, Air Force, Navy are going to be like coin flip games, and I'd rather just bet those games. But I do love them to win this conference. Just said New Mexico, want to bet they're under. UNLV want to bet they're under. I have questions about both, and I think the team that is poised to take advantage is Air Force. Calabrese, what are you seeing with the Falcons?
Fly, fight, win. This is going to be their year. Over 7.5 at plus money to win the conference. Best numbers at FanDuel, plus 610. You mentioned every time that Calhoun's down for multiple years, they come back with a vengeance. You also, what I appreciate and why these numbers are so good, yeah, they went 4-8 last year. They had some bad luck with injuries. They also took 3 bowl teams in Army, UNLV, and Navy to the wire, lost all 3 by a field goal. If they win 2 of those games, they go to a bowl game, and we know what service academies do in a bowl game. They would have won that too. That's 7 wins right there. Who knows what this number would be? It certainly wouldn't be 6-1 and north of that to win the conference. So I'm going to take advantage of that. And we talked about Zarka. He's Air Force's version of Blake Horvath. He can execute the offense. He can tote the rock. He can be a special passer, at least by service academy standards. And when you look at his 4-game stretch pre-injury, Boise, Hawaii, Navy, UNLV, he averaged 227 through the air, 134 on the ground, 13 total touchdowns in that 4-game stretch, and only 3 giveaways, despite having the ball in his hands essentially on every play. Yes, the offensive line has some questions. They still return almost 2,000 snaps, and they have 4 seniors and a junior, along that offensive line. So a lot of continuity within the program, a lot of practice reps. I think they'll be able to kind of smooth that over. They got, powerful runners like Owen Allen and the massive Kemper Hodges who came on late. I think he's an added battering ram at almost 250. The defense here is the difference between 6-6 and a conference title. Yes, they're third in returning production. I need a lot to happen from Steve Russ, who's coming to Colorado Springs for a second stint. Some of his defenses were pretty good. Some of them not so good. It's a mixed bag. Luckily, he's got, a thumper at linebacker in Isaac Hubert, who, that guy is super physical. He won the Academy's heavyweight boxing title in February in front of all his teammates. So, he can set the tone a little bit. The defensive line can't get injured. Not only is it a kind of a question mark, but there's no depth. And Chaz Burnett or Rawls Jr., somebody's got to really elevate themselves to first or second team Mountain West Conference standards to really punch through and win this thing. But there's no Power 4 teams on the schedule. Navy at home, UNLV at home. I have them favored in 9 games, so I feel very comfortable with this over. If I had a split between my overall confidence, I'd put 70% of this on the over 7.5, and then the other 30% taking a swing at 6-1 for them to win the Mountain West.
Duck, what are you seeing with the Flyboys?
If for people just looking in, I understand if Air Force does not earn the benefit of the doubt based on how the last couple of seasons have gone. They've been very disappointing. 2 years ago, the offense could hardly get a first down, and they were scoring 3 points, 7 points, 10 points. And then last year when the offense came on, it was the defense who let everybody down. But I do want to look at the totality of what Troy Calhoun has done over his 20 years at Air Force, and he has rebounded very well after down stretches. I think this is a season where Air Force gets themselves out of that and really performs well weekly. And I think they're going to win a lot of games. A healthy Liam Zarka is so critical for what this offense wants to do. They still adhere to the triple option. The other service academies have gone away from it, but Air Force is still adhering to a predominantly flex bone style triple option. They've got 2 bruising fullbacks, which are huge. Owen Allen takes on contact, 5.7 yards per carry. You need 3 yards, he's going to get you 3. You need 1 yard, he's going to get you 3. He's going to be the guy who gets you the tough yards. He's not afraid of the contact. And you can look at some of the skill guys lost, or particularly the slot backs, and Air Force is accustomed to the attrition, and they find guys that we have not heard of. They find diamonds in the rough that have pop, and I think we'll see that again this year. The receivers, Jonah Dawson is a guy who's an explosive receiver. Adam Hirinsu is a guy who played last year. Isaac Thomas has good size, and Matt Long. Those are guys that are blocking receivers that spring long running plays on the outside, and they can be deceptive in how they stem their routes to get behind corners to catch explosive passes. And I think Air Force will have that, like we saw them have that last season. I think that that's really important for their continuity. I think the offensive line is in okay shape. I know they're breaking in a new center, and that's the most important position on the offensive line. And you could look at the offensive line and say that they're undersized, but that's part of the scheme. It's what they recruit to. I actually think offensive line is going to be okay, and they kind of get the spot in the beginning of the season against Duquesne, who's a good NEC team, but they play in a horrific FCS conference. Air Force should have no trouble with Duquesne, and they'll really get some meaningful reps in that first game to figure that out. I think it's hugely critical that they get North Dakota State at the beginning of the season in their first road game as an FBS team. The defense does have some pieces that return, and I won't recap everybody that you talked about, but I think Hubert is a game changer, a guy who can create some havoc. I think the corners being so young last year and getting toasted and really struggling throughout the season will help them this year. You get another year in the system. Steve Russ coming back at defensive coordinator. He can tinker with what went wrong, and I think you'll see a much more formidable Air Force defense. I really think these guys are going to be improved. We are all kind of saying the same thing. We didn't compare notes beforehand. I love Air Force to go on a run this year. I really think this is a team that has an opportunity to be playing meaningful football in November to try to vie for the conference title. I think they can win the Commander-in-Chief trophy. I think 9-3 is not off the table. Falcons are going to be much, much tougher this year. Not necessarily that their defense is going to shut people down, but they're going to get stops on third down. They're not going to surrender as many explosive plays. They'll be able to secure some stops in the red zone, and that's all the difference between going 5-7 and seeing 8 or 9 wins on the board here. So I really like what Air Force is going to be able to do this year. I think they're going to be a very strong team.
We're all in agreement and all in on Air Force. I will also add, you mentioned the triple option. What is one of the reasons why these service academies run the triple option? Well, it's a unique scheme, right? They don't get the best, the 4 stars, the 5 stars, the portal class.
Weight restriction of the offensive line.
Yeah, and well, it's just a unique scheme. So they don't have the most talented teams, and so it's a hard prep. They're the only ones doing it. Why is that even more important this year? 5 teams left the conference, 3 new ones came in. There's more teams on their schedule in league play that don't see them every year and haven't seen them, right? You have all these teams that left the conference that are used to seeing them. There's 3 or 4 teams on their schedule that don't see them. And I think that can be an advantage, especially in year 1 of this new conference. A team that could be in the running is North Dakota State. North Dakota State, they're around plus 330. One of 3, I guess, co-favorites, along with New Mexico and UNLV, depending on where you look. Win total over 8.5, juiced heavily to the over, which is pretty high for a team making its FBS debut. They lost some real talent. I thought they had a couple, right? I mean, they lost a quarterback and a wide receiver to the NFL. They lost 7 multi-year starters on defense. And then I thought a really big loss was stealing at linebacker going to Michigan late. I really feel like they could have used him. They might have to rely on a freshman at linebacker as well. And then they lose Fraley at center to Michigan State, which I thought was another big loss. But they lost, 4 or 5 multi-year starters on offense, 7 on defense. And this is going to be more difficult. Step up in competition, new venues, new teams, new schemes, and your depth is going to be tested. Now, the returning production numbers are pretty good. They're 65th in returning production, right? You look at 11 of their top 20 on defense and snaps returned, and they're really deep at the defensive line. But like a lot of those guys were getting in blowouts, right? And they were blowing teams out. This is now they're going to be asked to be starters against better competition. The depth is going to be tested here. Also, I think that there's a drop off at quarterback. They've had 5 straight quarterbacks drafted into the NFL. I don't think that they necessarily have that this year. Wide receivers also a question. Have some questions in the secondary. So I know they're going to be tough, but I'm kind of leaning under here at 8.5 plus money. I project them at around 8.35. I think this is just a little too rich. But Duck, if there's anyone who would know, it's Duck. So I'm really curious to get your thoughts on North Dakota State and how you think they'll translate, especially in year one.
Well, it's an elite program that was so much better than their peers at the FCS level, hence the 9 or 10 national championships and the string of successful programs. It almost seemed like the fans were apathetic at times until they were playing in an FCS semifinal or final. But they're going to be much better equipped to handle this move than their counterpart Sacramento State, who we'll talk about tomorrow. But this is going to be very tough for North Dakota State in this first year for a variety of reasons. They are breaking in a new quarterback, Nathan Hayes. He's waited patiently here to get his chance. You look at the long lineage of excellent quarterbacks here with Brock Jensen, Easton Stick, Carson Wentz, Cam Miller. I don't think Nathan Hayes is that. We don't have explosivity in the receiver game. They had a game-changing receiver last year in Bryce Lance, who had 1,100 pass receiving yards, a ton of touchdowns, and was so explosive when he had his hands on the ball. They don't have that weapon this year on offense. They are down.
They didn't really bring anyone in. They brought in like a right tackle who's never played from Kansas and a wide receiver from Arizona who hasn't really done much because they also lost Nelson, who's there, a wide receiver there for like 5 years.
Yeah, and I believe that they are down a notch on both sides of the trench, on the offensive trench and on the defensive trench. They were not as potent running the ball. They could just bludgeon teams in the second half of games for years and years and years, and they just didn't do as much of that last year. Defensively, I do have a few concerns as well. You know, they lose some production along the defensive line. You're getting Kelton McCaslin and Keenan Wilson, who have been around a while, and Logan Larson gets elevated to the starting platoon. But I wonder how much havoc they're going to create at this level. Gavin Sell is a redshirt freshman at linebacker, and they bring in Keith Williams, who was a good player who's coming over from Cornell, but not a guy brought up in the system and making a huge step up from the Ivy League. I really wonder how this front is going to be able to impose their will. There's a few other things, though, to be said about the schedule and the preparation and how this is going to go. North Dakota State was so much better than 9 or 10 of the opponents they would play every year. They played very well when playing up against FBS in a one-game scenario. They played very well playing South Dakota State in the Dakota Marker game, knowing those were two FCS heavyweights going up against each other. But regularly, they were able to prepare knowing that the 2s and the 3s were going to get a lot of mop-up time as the starting platoon was sitting on the sidelines picking their nose in the fourth quarter, and they prepared that way. They scheduled and modeled their practices that way, and now you're going to have so much taxing wear and tear from a unique travel standpoint, facing new opponents, having so many more snaps logged by your first string. It's going to be a year that I think is really going to test North Dakota State. The regular season win total opened at 9.5 65 days ago. You could get 9.5 minus 130 to the under. People think that this team was just going to roll in here and go 10-2 or better, and I don't think so. I do think they're equipped to handle the transition better than many people might think. I think 7 or 8 wins is possible for North Dakota State. I think it's going to be a team that shows well, but on the road in Vegas, going to New Mexico, going to Hawaii, going to Air Force. Those are spots where I want to fade North Dakota State against the number, as it's just going to be tricky preparing against elite athletes, stronger athletes than they've seen before, unique schemes. They do have an exquisite home field advantage in the Fargo Dome. I think there will be some play-on spots to play the Bison at home, but I think it's a fool's errand expecting this team to win the conference, and I don't think 10 wins is on the table. So I would lean under 8.5 on the win total. We should have had this conversation a few months ago when it was 9.5.
Yeah, I mean their floor is very high because of this, just the state of the program and what they bring back and their home field advantage. They should go 6-0 at home, and then you also have Sac State and San Jose State on the road.
Should be wins.
So like you can see how right there's 8. And then all they got to do is steal one if they take care of business. Obviously, that they might not. and then all they have to do is steal one on the road, so, which is why I'm around 8.3. But I'd still lean under. What are you saying here, Mike?
Yeah, I'll make this quick. In terms of the pluses for this team, the schedule's there, the established identity's there, but then it starts to get a little bit murky. I mean, 18th in offensive line experience coming back, but Trent Fraley, shout out to Hank, his dad, who was a center for the Eagles back in the day.
Legend.
He's now a coach for the Detroit Lions. He won the Remington Award at the FCS level, best center. It's hard to lose somebody at that level who's kind of the captain of the offensive line. So that I'm concerned with that. Nathan Hayes certainly fits the mold of an NDSU quarterback. He's mobile. He's got a nice deep ball, willing to throw it downfield. But this wide receiver room is green. The back seven lost a lot of star power. We talked about the roadies, Air Force, UNLV, New Mexico, Hawaii. I think we missed the best number, basically, at this point. It would have been an under if it was that number that Duck referred to 2 months ago. I'm still excited about this team. I think they're going to be great for the conference, but I don't see any betting angle here at this point.
All right, let's move on to Hawaii. Win total 7.5, heavily juiced to the under. Hawaii's 7-1 ish to win the conference, coming off an 8-4 regular season, 9-4 if you include the bowl game. Alejado comes back at quarterback. So you think, look, Timmy Chang's got this thing rolling. I'm out. I'm out on Hawaii. I looked at this team in depth again last night before I pulled the trigger on the under. I love this under. You can find 7.5 under minus 140. Up to minus 150-ish is fine. Yeah. Well, number one, Alejado comes back. He's very small, very injury prone, as we saw last year. He missed a couple games. Fortunately for Hawaii, he missed Sam Houston and Portland State, which is the games that you can miss. If he misses this year, they have no quarterback depth at all. But I look at this roster, and I have questions everywhere, right? You lose 3 multi-year starters on the offensive line. You lose your running back. You lose Jackson Harris, a very good receiver, to LSU. You lose another receiver to Kansas State. And then your all-conference receiver now is hurt in Ashlock. We don't know what's going on with him. And by the way, all these questions, and if Ashlock's hurt early, all of your toughest games are early on. So if he's not ready to go, the hardest part of their schedule is the first half up until, the first 7 leading up to New Mexico game. And then on the defensive side of the ball, I think they plummet. Manuma was one of the most underrated safeties in the country, 4-year starter for them. Now he found his way onto an NFL roster. They lost 6 other multi-year starters on that defense. They lose 7 overall. The offense loses 4. Who did they bring in? On defense, they bring in a Portland guy. I know they bring in Brown at corner, who was here for 3 years before, so that probably will work. But a West Georgia guy, no one that I'm really impressed by, and they lost some real experience and a couple really good players. You also have one of their better players on defense is coming off an ACL, and their linebacker Otis. I just have questions all over about this team. Additionally, the special teams should fall off of a cliff. Lose an All-American kicker, lose a very good punter. The best thing that Hawaii has going for it is their schedule. I just think this team's in for a long season. And I think when you throw in the fact that the Alejado injury risk, the special teams drop off, the fact that I only project them at 6.55 without even going into some of the downside risks here and the depth concerns, I love the Hawaii under. Duck, you agree?
I do. It's been in the app about a week, and I think there's a couple of interesting things to consider. Timmy Chang had almost started to lose the fan base after 3 disappointing seasons to his tenure, and it's not like it was the fun run-and-shoot offense that he could hang his hat on like when he was a player there. It wasn't running or shooting, and you can understand during his first 3 seasons the 2-15 road record, but the home dominance that Hawaii experienced was gone, as the Bows were just 10-11 straight up at home during those first 3 years. We saw some things change. We saw the experienced defense finally step up and create turnovers, create havoc, get stops in the red zone, things Hawaii defense was not accustomed to doing. We saw Timmy Chang effectively sprinkle in the run game with Landon Sims in order to be able to convert third and short, fourth and short, something they were not doing back when Brandon Shager was their quarterback. And they lose a lot. They lose Sims. They lose a ton of explosivity at the receiver position. And now with Pafele Ashlock potentially not a go early, the run and shoot offense is not just plug and play. It's a very complex system. Receivers may not know what routes they're running when the play is called until they get to analyze the defense for 2 or 3 steps. Every other traditional system that a receiver plays in is not that. And so to just assume the guy from Washington is going to come in, or the other transfers that they added, we'll just throw a guy in here because he can catch passes. It is such a unique system to try to get a handle on. And I do think that Hawaii is going to take their lumps early because of some of those things. The defense, the guys lost on defense, and the productivity coming back. There are guys that are in prove it mode, guys that you have to have elevate their performance, guys that ran with the twos last year on the defensive line like Luther McCoy and Keo Akins. Those are guys that are going to have to step up and make plays that they were not called upon to do last season. The secondary is a bit of a question. Special teams was such a pleasant bright spot for Hawaii last year, and they used Cam Barfield as a guy who could return kicks. I don't think they're going to do that with him this year because he's scheduled to start at running back. You had such a weapon with the Tokyo toe, and when you lose a guy like that who could just reliably kick long field goals, and it wasn't even sweating it for 55-yard field goals, that is such a game changer, because now when those field goals are missed and you give your opponent the ball on the 43-yard line going in the other way, it really can kind of flip the script on some of those games for Hawaii. A few other important scheduling notes that I think are really important. There's no FCS opponent this year. They played 3 over the prior 2 seasons. Hawaii only has 6 home games. Each of the last 2 years, they played 7 games on the island. They have 2 of those road games at Power 4 environments. You have to go to Laradice. You have to go to Nevada in the cold. North Dakota State comes into your building off of a bye, while Hawaii will just be getting back from El Paso. I just think it's tricky. I worry about the quarterback durability. I love Micah Alejado. He's such a fun player to watch. He's very productive, but I worry about him staying healthy. And it's not like they have a guy behind him in Luke Weaver who can just plug into the system and go. I just think we're going to see much more turbulence with Hawaii. And it's not like we have a regime that's accustomed to winning. There's a real chance that last year was Hawaii's outlier. And I think they make a bowl game, but much past 6-6, I don't see it here with the Bows.
Yeah, I mean, additionally, like, their wide receiver room's way worse. And especially if you don't have Ashlock. Their offensive line is way worse, in my opinion. The defense is significantly worse. The special teams is worse. And then you got a quarterback who's injury prone with no depth. I love the under here. You agree, Mike?
Yeah, I'm on it too. The run and shoot's going to be firing blanks this year. There's no way that Alejado plays 10 or more games, because when you look at this system and how fragile he is, there's not a lot of formations or play calls on the sheet that lend itself to max protect. And with his offensive line breaking in new pieces and depth concerns, he'll get hurt. They'll turn to one of 2 freshmen, or someone super light on experience. I just don't see it. I think the defense is going to get shredded. No Tokyo toe being super clutch. I mean, this was a team, you just went through it. They win their opener in their bowl game by the skin of their teeth. It has great vibes. It's a great story. That's last year. Nobody cares about last year anymore. This is the new era of college football. Jackson Harris has a great season. He's off to a Power 4 program like LSU. I think they just simply do not have the money and the resources to retain and attract the kind of talent that can maintain that kind of level. So yeah, I see 5 or 7 or 6-6 here. So I'm on the under with you guys.
All right, let's move on to Laradice and talk a little Pokes. Wyoming, win total 5.5, right around even money. They are that little juice to the over. They've taken a little bit of over money, 15-1 to win the league. Look, I wanted to bet this over 5.5 and convince myself that Wyoming was going to go to a bowl. I project them at around 6.1 wins, so I show a little value to the over. And then I just look at this team, and I look at the schedule, and I'm like, there's a lot of winnable road games on their schedule, right? And it's just like, it feels like everyone talking up Wyoming is just hoping that this new quarterback from William & Mary is the savior. with a new offensive coordinator who did work with him, came from the Bills, but worked with him for a season at William and Mary. But I look at the rest of the roster. I mean, their defense lost almost everything. They're relying on a couple defensive linemen that are coming back from injury. But, I mean, offensively, they lose 7 multi-year starters. 4 ended up on NFL rosters. How is that possible? Tell me you watched that Wyoming offense last year, and how did 4 players on that offense end up on NFL rosters? But they lost 2 other 3-year starters on the offensive line. The wide receiver room is lacking, to say the least. I love Toad Harris at running back, but well, I just look at this roster and I'm just not overly wowed. So this is probably a pass for me. Good punter. I like the punter. Mike, you like the under here?
Yeah, I think this. I get the scheduling. Like, that's obviously any win total you have to go through game by game and try to be honest with yourself. But I think this is based, this number, on if Craig Bohl was the coach, when they had an identity, when they had a run game, they had defense, they used that altitude late in the season, the snow, the wind. But Jay Sauvel is not that guy. He's 7-17 straight up. He's got to be better at home, and they're just not. Like, this home field advantage, they're 6-6 against the spread. They lost 5 of 6 to end last year. Yeah, Tyler Hughes is an upgrade, and he's interesting, and they're going to be able to use him in the run game, but they can't get him hurt because they don't have depth there.
He also could just flop, stepping up.
Well, of course. I mean, it's not always just a plug and play, and just because you got success, that doesn't necessarily mean anything. And by the way, this is an offense that was just, I mean, they struggled to score 2 touchdowns per game last year. And the defense, as you mentioned,
averaged 8 points per game in their last 4 games.
It's a lot to ask for all of a sudden for them to be in the mid-20s and the defense not to fall off a cliff, and their 120th in returning production. I have missed dog in 7 games. That is enough to me to go under 5.5. That means they have to handle their business every single time that they're favored. No tripping up, no sleepwalking through a half. Like, they have to win those games. And then that means they got to upset one of Hawaii, Central Michigan, or Air Force. I don't see it. I think they will trip up at least once. I think they'll give away a game that they shouldn't, because they're going to be low-scoring games, and the variance and weird things can happen in one-possession games. And then I love Air Force. I think Hawaii, it just depends if Ali Hado's healthy. If he is, I think they're able to get that win. And Central Michigan, I'm a little bit higher on than most in the MAC to at least be feisty. So I'll go under 5.5.
Yeah, I think they really missed bowl. Like, last year was supposed to be the year they were taking a step, right? And they were 28th in returning production. Now they're bottom 15. I can't get there. I want to bet the over. My numbers show little value in the over. I see it in the schedule. Can't do it. Doc?
I mean, I want to bet the over as well, and I see it in the schedule. People are talking about the offensive coordinator, Christian Taylor, coming in. They might run a little bit more tempo. I don't know. I feel like when the rubber meets the road, I think we're going to see them revert back to running the football. Tyler Hughes has to perform well because their backup, Mason Drewby, stinks. He was not good last year. I think you put Toad Harris in the backfield. You run 12 and 13 personnel. They do have a great tight end room. Kyle Friend, Landon Pace, Jake Wilson. I mean, they've got guys that are big-bodied tight ends that would be able to have an impact in run blocking and possibly catching some passes.
They've had that for years. It's done nothing.
I mean, that's really what you have to do, because the receiver room is bare. Chris Durr and talent like that is gone. And so I can't imagine we're getting a lot of explosive pass plays. It's going to be 3 yards in a cloud of dust. You know, the O-line I'm not super down on. They're getting their left tackle back after being out for the season last year. Jason Masijic comes in from Nebraska. So we'll see. There's a couple guys that they might be able to count on here. And they have to be able to sustain possession and more, convert more on third down, and just not leave the defense high and dry, which they did so regularly last season. And the defense I mean, they tried to hang in there as best as they could. When you look at the yards surrendered and you look at the points given up, I mean, their Wyoming defense really hung in there and kept their team in games at times, but I don't know.
So bad.
The offense was bad, and the defense now is reliant on FCS talent. You've got Donnie Wingate, who's a havoc dude coming in from Southern Illinois, could be a productive player. Jack Dunkley was really good at Duquesne. I don't know how much that translates here. Dante Drake comes back at D tackle after missing some time last year with injury. So there are some pieces here. I don't know if I love what they did in the secondary, although Desmond Hearns could be a decent player at the nickel position. The schedule has wins on it. I think it's such a volatile team. Wyoming could start the season 6-1. They could start the season 2-5. We talk about the pricing and how many games this team is favored in. I have 9 games priced within about 5 points either way for Wyoming. 2 of the games I don't have priced that way are games where they're favored against Northern Colorado and hosting Northern Illinois. So I do think that I wouldn't be stunned at all if something breaks their way this season. They end up 6-6, but I wouldn't call for anything better than that. I think I think they're eking into UConn to make a bowl game.
I'm just going to put this out there, by the way. Tyler Hughes, you look at his stats. 11 rushing touchdowns. He ran it 155 times last year. He'll probably have more carries than Jet Thomas at UNLV. He's not going to break down. Like, everything's going to be fine. He's going to stay healthy. I agree with your assessment. Very succinct. It stinks behind him on that depth chart. So if he is not the dude and elevates this offense, they're in trouble. I don't necessarily see it coming together.
All right, let's move on to Nevada. Wolfpack. Win total 4.5, 30-1 to win the conference. Quarterback battle here. You have Carter Jones, who started some games as a true freshman. Luke Duncan comes in from UCLA. They say AJ Bianco, who's a backup last year's in the mix, but it's really between Jones and Duncan. They need to find a quarterback. This is a team that has 42 touchdown passes and 45 interceptions since Carson Strong left in 2021. They bring in a new offensive coordinator from Colorado. They're going to run an air raid with what receivers? I don't see it. Duck, you kind of like this Nevada team. They do return 3 offensive linemen, and then they bring in 2 offensive linemen who were both at Memphis and then Kennesaw State before then under the new offensive line coach who was the offensive coordinator at Kennesaw. So they know his calls and they know his offensive line. So there's some continuity on the offensive line. I do really like this. This team plays hard, and I have a lot of respect. They just don't have a lot of resources, and there's just not a lot of talent on this team. But you like this team? You like the over, Duck?
I lean that way. I haven't gotten to the window yet. I think the QB situation is interesting because Carter Jones did come on late in the season and shine a lot better than Bianchio did. So if Luke Duncan is there threatening to take the job, I think that's probably a decent situation to be in given what they've had before. I think Herschel Turner is a guy who could take the next step at running back and at least be serviceable. You're getting FCS flavor with the receivers, guys coming in from Valparaiso, Southeast Missouri. It's just not a lot of
these receivers are bad. Like they're Gibbons from Northern Illinois is horrendous. Like that's one of the guys they're relying on.
I think JC Ondas is a guy who could be under the radar and could be a guy that could catch some passes.
Is that the Towson guy?
Towson. Yep. And so we'll see. Offensive line, they're big, they're beefy. They should be able to run the ball here. Kocknauer was a 4th team Mountain West All-Conference selection last year. Jack Foster is a decent player. You're getting Jacob Norcross, who played at Memphis. So I think there are some pieces. You get Lababera coming back on the defensive line, which is huge. Loga Va is back at defensive tackle. 329 should be a hole plugger against the run. EJ Smith at middle linebacker anchoring that group. There are some decent players in the secondary. Joshua Scott comes over from Eastern Michigan. You're getting some of the second team platoon from San Jose State, and then Bryson Smelling and Aiden Walker. They could be okay, and I think the schedule does have wins for the taking. I actually like Nevada in the opener against Western Kentucky, who I'm lower on. Nevada will likely be a dog against Montana State, who's a better team. They're coming off the FCS National Championship. There have been times where the Bobs have not done well playing up in competition. They lose some pieces in the trenches, so we'll see. At Middle Tennessee is absolutely winnable. I'll fade Derek Mason any chance I get. At UTEP is winnable. At North Dakota State is not winnable. I'll probably fade them there. But there are some spots where I think Nevada can be really feisty, and we saw them play some decent football. Like you said, Stuck, they play very hard for Jeff Choate. This is likely his best team since he's been there. I just think it's a team that is on the cusp of breaking through, and so you got to be able to anticipate when that breakthrough may happen and when these guys can come together. I don't think they're going to win the league, but I honestly would not be stunned if they're playing to vie for a bowl game. 5 wins would not stun me.
Mike, I know you're passing. Any quick thoughts?
I actually think the opening to this slate for UNR is a little tricky. Western Kentucky is an established winner with a great G6 coach. Montana State's the defending FCS national champs. And I disagree a little bit. I think the long roadie to Middle Tennessee, they're desperate for wins. I wouldn't shock. I think, that'll be like a 3-point spread. I just see doing all of this with a revamped defense. Ione has done an above average job, really done more with less. But this defense never creates turnovers, only created 28 in 2 years with him, which is good for about 95th in the sport. This offense, with all new skill position players, needs all the field position they can get. So I'm a little bit down on them. Nothing actionable out of me, but I just wanted to raise those concerns.
I was going to Minor Nation, talk a little UTEP. Win total 3.5. Super long shots to win the league. They're stepping up in class here, moving up to the Mountain West. This team, I mean, look, this is year 3 for Scotty Walden. There's some potential positive regression. I mean, last year, look, they were a little better. Their average margin of defeat went from 19 in his first year to 12. They went 0-3 in one-possession games. They had a minus 12 turnover margin. They lost 17 players to season-ending injuries on their 2 deep. So there's some potential positive regression here and maybe a little signs of progress. Then you look at the roster and they got hammered. I mean, they lost their top 15 snap counts all on offense, all gone, 10 transferred out. And who are they replacing? I mean, you look at who Texas, they're losing guys to other power programs. They don't have any money. They don't have any resources, and their administration is horrendous. But they lose guys to to FBS teams, and then they bring in Texas A&M guys, not Texas A&M, Texas A&M Kingsville, East Texas A&M. So it's for guys from Virginia, not University of Virginia, Virginia State, not Texas, Texas Southern. So not Northwestern State. It's pretty ugly. They're gonna play the new defense coordinator, but they're gonna run the same thing. He's in house, the aggressive 3-3-5 defense, try to create chaos. But the hope here is that EJ Colson. There's 2 things that they're hoping for. EJ Colson, who comes, it was at the start of the game at UCF, shined at Incarnate Word last year, had a really good year. He comes in at quarterback. The hope is that he's a huge upgrade at the position, and that a lot of this youth, because the one thing Walden's done is he's recruited well. He's had really good recruiting classes. They lose a ton of guys, but they've played a bunch of young guys over the past couple of years. His first 2 recruiting classes had another good recruiting class. They're recruiting Texas pretty well. So you just got to hope a lot of these young guys hit, and Colson hits at quarterback. But this team lost a lot. They went from, last year they were top 50 returning production, bottom 10 this year. But they could upgrade a quarterback, which could go a long way. I wanted to bet UTEP over. I was like, there's some momentum here. Can't do it. I'm at 3.2. Probably a pass. But Mike, what do you got? Anything on Minor Nation?
I'm just going to bet a lot of their overs. Scotty Walden, 14-10 to the over in his tenure, 9th in seconds between plays last year. Could be an upgrade with EJ Colson. He's efficient. He's mobile. They named him, the starter out of spring. Full media blitz about how he's the dude. He's the man in the locker room. People are rallying to him. Something to keep in mind, though, I've talked about this with some other teams overrunning their quarterbacks. Scotty loves to. He puts almost a 25%, share in carries to his QBs. So can this kid take a pounding the whole year? We'll see. Can the offensive line not suck? I don't have an answer to that. Defense.
No, probably not. The offensive line's probably be bad. And Colson had like a 28% sack rate.
Right.
Which is not a great sign.
And sure, I like their portal additions at wide receiver, production at lower levels, the shout out to Virginia State, no disrespect to the Trojans or Northwestern State, the Demons, but they needed some guys with some more talent, at least in my opinion, into the mix. The defense promoted from within. I think they needed to go outside for that hire. No disrespect to Kyle Bayer, but they needed someone new so they could generate something other than just havoc, because they were top 20 in tackles for loss last year. They still gave up north of 30 points per game. They didn't take the ball away. It feels a little bit like Texas State's issue, where it's their tackle for loss numbers are always great, but at the end of the day, their defense isn't very good. So I'm just going to keep playing their overs this entire season. I don't have a season-long opinion on their win total. They're certainly not going to sniff viability for a conference championship appearance, but I think that they should cash 60 to 70% of their overs this season.
Duck, Colson comes in. it is exciting for those in El Paso, but there's two guys on this offense that are going to start named Cheeks, and I think that's very fitting because the supporting cast
Is Cheeks.
Cheeks. What do you see here with UTEP?
Very similar. I think EJ Colson could shine. I think they're really hoping to catch lightning in a bottle like other UIW quarterbacks that have migrated to the FBS level. And I do think Cam Thomas is a fun receiver with breakaway capabilities. Carver Cheeks comes over after nearly 1,000 yards in the Big Sky. Tight end Cash Cheeks is exquisite, 6'7", 235, could be a matchup issue over the middle. Trench play I'm worried about on both sides. I don't know that the defense is going to matriculate a lot of stops. You're asking guys from Jackson State, Stephen F. Austin, Cornell, and the aforementioned Texas A&M Kingsville on the offensive line to try to get it all in the mix and make it work. And you really are not going to figure out what you have the first 3 weeks because you're not going to the Big House and winning. You're not going to Norman and winning. And you will likely defeat Texas Southern, and that'll be a fun home game, but you still don't know what you have when you get into Mountain West play. So I think it's just going to be consistent battles of trying to figure the offensive line out. And I think the Havoc numbers are not going to get any better. Defensively, they have a few guys that they certainly made an attempt in the portal, getting Sterling Miles, who was a fun edge rusher coming over from Eastern Michigan. Austin Coker has played a decent amount of football here. Jaden Wilson is a nice linebacker, but it's nothing earth-shattering. The secondary and the rest of the defense is an FCS level roster, and it's really going to be hard for these guys to compete. Bowl game eligibility is completely off the table here, and it's really a shame in El Paso because their fan base shows up. They're starved for winning football. They get 30,000 fans at their games, and it's just stunning that they can't put it together. I don't know if I'm buying into the Scotty Walden thing. He's a high energy guy. He's recruited well. He can't keep guys. It's so unfortunate. But I do want to circle back to what Mike said because I've looked into this team extensively and that of their opponents. I think the betting deliverable is UTEP overs. Oklahoma can score 55. I think we'll see Oklahoma get their first and second team out of there. UTEP will keep running their stuff. I think Oklahoma is an over. I think when they host Oregon State, it's an over. I think when they play a team like San Jose State, that's an over. So I do think that in-game UTEP overs will be something to look into this season.
Two more dregs. We'll finish quickly. San Jose State, they play 13 games, and their win total is 4.5, juice to the over. I can't get that. I'm at 3-9. They play 13 games. What happened to this team? I mean, this team got destroyed. Like, this roster got absolutely decimated on both sides of the ball. There's one returning starter on offense, like a guy that, I mean, I guess you could argue two with Chen, like just some offensive lineman that played a couple positions. Their defense brings back no starters. Lose 12 of their top 13 tacklers. There's a quarterback battle here. Luke Weaver comes in from Hawaii. We just talked about him. Maybe they can catch like Rolovich, the freshman. Nick, if you guys know Nick Rolovich, the run and shoot, he's at Cal now. It's his son. There's another freshman in the mix. I mean, maybe like Rolovich, he's got a big arm. Maybe he can unlock something. But this roster is bad. I know they lost. Like, not all losses are created equal. Like, yeah, they lost their left guard and left tackle. Their left tackle has been the worst left tackle in FBS for the last 2 years. Lapuoha or whatever his name is. But where's the talent that they brought in? I mean, this is a bot. Like, they didn't bring in anybody. This team, I can't go low. And am I going too low on this team? How much did I downgrade them? I downgraded them, and it's not like they were very good last year. I mean, they were bad last year, and I downgraded them 6.5 points. Like, they're basically like at NIU and UTEP for me. Like, who's good on this team? Anyone that was good transferred to P4. Like, Duck, anything on this team looks horrendous. And I know they played 13 games, but I mean, even they're second. Like, they might lose at Eastern Washington, short week after playing USC. And then, like, I know that there's 13 games here, but I think I might go under 4.5.
I mean, the quarterback is a downgrade from what they had last season with Walker Egan leaving. Even if it is Luke Weaver, I think it's a downgrade. There are no receivers whatsoever that resemble what they've had before with Nick Nash and Danny Scudero. I think Jabiri Bates is a nice running back, but running the football is not the motif here. And so it's not going to be as effective because they throw the ball all over the yard. They have a system where they get the ball out quickly and they don't surrender a lot of sacks, but the offensive line is regularly allowing havoc, and quarterback I don't see a lot going well as far as matriculating the drives and really getting the ball to be in a position to be scored. I just don't think the offense is going to be very potent. Guys, the defense looks really, really bad here. Really, really horrific. I've already played the over in the opener against USC. I just don't think that this team is going to get any stops. Linebacker is a huge concern for me. You've got a guy coming in from Weber State and a pair of guys in Nasir Danielson and Ezek Mahuka, who were with the twos last year. All four in the secondary are gone from last season. It's really going to be tough to try to cover receivers when you're bringing in fringe G6 and fringe FCS guys. I just don't see it. I love Navy Ken, but I do not love him here, and I don't love this team. They're the only team that plays 13 games this year, and that kept me off the under, but I have these guys favored in 2 games, and I think it could go really ugly here with San Jose State.
Yeah, you think one game will tell you? I meant Eastern Michigan. I said Eastern Washington. You think that Eastern Michigan game will tell you all you need to know, Mike?
Mike does.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I think if they lose that game and they do not have it together on offense, 2-11 is on the table. I mean, they've been an organ donor to the rich for multiple years. Nick Nash leaves, then Danny Scudero. Like, they just can't survive this. Now, I'm not playing it just because I'm going to be honest with you guys. Just respect for Coach Ken. I don't want to root against this guy getting fired at midseason, but that Eastern Michigan game, that'll be it. That'll be the canary in the coal mine. They go down bad in Ypsilanti. It's only going to get worse from there.
Yep. Yeah. Sorry, I got confused. They're going to be. I have them like 5-point dogs at Eastern Michigan. I might be too low. I mean, that's a tough spot too. I meant to say they might also lose to Cal Poly at home in week 3 after back-to-back road games. Right, Duck? You could see that.
I would not lay 21, which I project at current, but
Is Cal Poly
I would guess
down?
Cal Poly's not very good. I would guess that San Jose State would win the game, but if you're getting multiple scores with the Mustangs, I would be looking at that.
All right. Lastly, Northern Illinois. Big adjustment moving to Mountain West with elevation, travel, new types of offenses. And this team lost its head coach. Thomas Hammock decided to go to the NFL. Get the defensive coordinator is going to be the interim head coach, Rob Harley. There is a quarterback battle here. A number of guys. They bring in D2 Charleston transfer. There's a connection to the coordinator. You have Macon from last year. He's terrible. But then the big news, Davidson's still around. The big news is a guy originally committed to North Carolina in why is his last name escape me? Dickens. What's his first name? Taron Dickens, who was a monster at Western Carolina, committed to Northern Illinois. There's still a quarterback battle going on. I assume if this team wants to do anything, Dickens needs to win the job. Win total for Northern Illinois is low, as you would expect. It is sitting at 3.5, juice to the under. There's a lot you could tear this team to pieces. Moving up, the travel, they lost basically everything. They lost 17 of their top 19 on defense and snap counts. All of their top 11, 9 of them transferred out. I mean, this defense looks bad. I mean, who did they bring in? It's just D2, Bryant, St. Thomas, Long Island, Lafayette, Butler. I mean, they could start 2 freshman linebackers, 2 freshman defensive tackles. They lost their top 14 tacklers, and it's now like an FCS D2 defense. Maybe they have some pieces on offense. Losing Malcor really hurts. That left tackle went to Miami, Ohio. But Telly Johnson, Diari Rogers, they bring back Thompson, who was like their second leading receiver a couple years ago. He stopped at Mississippi State, then came back. So like if Dickens can hit, I wanted to bet this under because everything about this team is a mess. And they're super young, super inexperienced, interim coach. But like there's a lot of winnable games if Dickens hits on the schedule. I project 3.35. I wanted to go under. Not enough margin, and there's just Dickens changes the formula for me if he wins that job because he does have a lot of upside. Mike, what do you see here?
He's got huge upside. Like if anybody watches this guy play, he's got like a little bit of Joey Hamilton, a little bit of Johnny Manziel. He doesn't have like the greatest arm strength by any stretch, but he throws with incredible anticipation. Like you'll watch him layer passes and get out of trouble. The rest of this roster, I'm I'm not enamored with to say little here, but when you look at it too, you got Tony Peterson coming in as the OC from Illinois State, a team that got within a point of winning the FCS national title. Tommy Rittenhouse, his sawed-off quarterback, so he worked with a guy sub 6 feet. He had 47 total touchdowns last year. So to go off of a season for Dickens, I know it's FCS football, but a 38 touchdown, 2 interception season when he had to play a lot of backyard football. He gets Telly Johnson to work with, who had just about 6 yards per carry as a reserve back. I think Peterson, historically likes a bell cow. I think he's going to go ahead and feed this guy 200 times. I think the offense is going to be considerably better than what they're getting, at least the preseason hype with. If Dickens wins the starting job. This defense is so bad, though. This schedule is so treacherous. I can't bet him preseason, but I think they could certainly sneak up on some people. And I'm just telling you right now, if there's not a whole lot of appointment television quarterbacks in this league, if he wins the job, he is going to be required to pull a rabbit out of his hat every single Saturday. And I'm at least going to watch it, and hopefully he doesn't get hurt because he's like 5'10", 175 pounds. But this guy was really, really good. Just spend 3 minutes watching his highlight tape from Western Carolina last year. You'll come away impressed.
Duck, yeah, I mean, he is super, super impressive. Now, Duck, you're looking at potential overs, opponent team total overs. I will tell you that Diari Rogers, with their best receiver, is a pretty good player. Threw some shade at Hammock. In a recent quote, he said, the old NIU offense, we run. We just throw it when we have to. The new NIU offense, we throw it because we can. All that's left is figuring out a starting quarterback. And he went on to basically say, like, we're throwing it around a ton. We're going to be throwing it a bunch. A lot of people say things in the offseason, but maybe the Thomas Hammock just wanted to run on first, run on second, and then punt. Duck, what are you seeing here?
Well, and we saw him higher in the OC from the Division II ranks, and the talk last year was that they were going to run some more tempo and they were going to throw the ball more, and immediately when the rubber met the road and things got tough, they reverted back into old habits of just pounding the rock. So there's a chance that this offense gets liberated a little bit now that Hammock's no longer there and that they open it up. I do have under 3.5 regular season wins as a play that I've logged and actually bet. I don't think this team is gonna have a lot of success. You've got quirky travel. You're preparing for 12 new opponents. The start of the schedule is a disaster at Iowa, at Arizona, at Georgia State. I think is a really tough spot for them playing a team.
They got 5 cross country trips too.
Oh, it's horrific. You got to go to Wyoming. You go to Vegas, San Jose. I mean, it is just so brutal. I don't expect this team to win one single game on the road all season, and they play 7 of them. I think the home games, you're playing a lot of the tougher opponents in Air Force and Hawaii. You could make a case they'll beat UTEP and Illinois State and Nevada. I don't think they'll be underdogs against Nevada. But the betting deliverable that we can capture every week is you can bet their game overs and you can bet opponent team total overs. And the reason I think that is if they're going to throw the ball, it's going to be boom or bust. They're going to take shots downfield, something they never did. They tried so badly last year to shorten games, truncate them down, outpossess teams. It's going to look nothing like that offensively for Northern Illinois. So you're going to have more possessions. You're going to have more shots on goal for the opponent. And this defense, guys, is way, way down. You look up and down the 2 deep, and you guys hit it on the head. It's Division II guys. It's low-level FCS guys. And they're not pulling from the Missouri Valley Conference or the Big Sky. They're pulling from the NEC. They're pulling from the non-scholarship Pioneer Football League. They're pulling from these leagues that are just way to the Ohio Valley Conference, and there's a defense that is just so devoid of talent. I just have no idea how Northern Illinois ever gets any stops. I think that if they're going to win games, they're going to have to win them in shootouts. But I mean, there's just so many tough spots on the schedule. Playing Air Force, I went back and looked, and I couldn't find any triple option style opponents on their schedule since 2012. So there's no familiarity with the scheme. Then they're going to have to go to Wyoming and play in elevation. They go to the cross country travel is just so bad here. So this is a team I want to fade on the win total. Their games could be entertaining. I think Dickens is a guy that really is a guy who gives the offense a chance to succeed. I don't love a ton of the skill guys. They've got a decent receiver, but they're undersized at the receiver position. They've got a couple guys from last season that really never made a ton of plays. The offensive line is a work in progress, but defensively, these guys are atrocious. So in-game overs or opponents that they face, their team total over is a deliverable that I want to execute on.
Sneaky over week 1 against Iowa. Iowa has got to the window for overs 60% of the time in the last 2 years. You know, the book was written on the Iowa unders. If it's Dickens, I think it's 45.5. Go over on that one.
Before we get out of here, quickly, favorite win totals, your pick to win it, and who are they beating? My pick to win it, Air Force, my favorite future. Favorite win totals, Hawaii under. Lean San Jose State under, might get there. Lean North Dakota State under. Would play Air Force over. Duck?
Hawaii under, Northern Illinois under, already in the app. I lean slightly to Nevada and Wyoming going over their regular season win totals. I've got Air Force winning the conference this year.
Calabrese?
It's going to be a rare back-to-back end of the regular season. Air Force is going to get the win over New Mexico or give it up. We'll see, whoever. But in the conference title game, Air Force over New Mexico in a rematch in back-to-back weeks. I'm banking on them going with the Oregon transfers, their quarterback and their offense taking a step forward. Also, under on Hawaii, 7.5. We'll make it a clean sweep.
Under Hawaii, Air Force to win the league. That's the takeaway from here. Thanks to Duck. Thanks to Mike for joining me. Thanks to our producer, David, on the back end. Most importantly, thanks to all of you for tuning in. You guys make the show. You guys are why we do this. It's the most comprehensive. If you can't tell how excited we are to talk Mountain West teams, and you're here right now and excited, that's why this is the best college football podcast in the land. But we appreciate all you guys. Previews will keep coming. Make sure you subscribe, tell a friend, tell an enemy. Leave a 5-star review. Duck has some free futures he's going to give out. I have some free futures I'm going to give out. Put it a long shot you want to bet. I have some hats I'm going to give away. 5-star reviews, they really help us out in the summer. Thanks for tuning in. We'll catch y'all later. Cheers.